Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Bafun, and this podcast is an extension of my book, also called Listen to Your Footsteps, which is a collection of essays, reflections, and poetry on things like fatherhood, identity and belonging, growing up, creativity, and the lessons learned. The purpose of this podcast is to gain insight and learn from the journeys that others have taken. I explore the worlds of art, culture, design, business, creativity, and life from the perspective of Africans who are contributing to the redefinition of the continent and who we are. My guest in this episode is Ralph Williams III, also known as the rapper Stagga Don Dada. I chat to him about growing up between the UK and Botswana, identity, forays into the music industry, fatherhood, and much more. I hope you enjoy this conversation. First of all, thank you for coming onto this. Agreeing to come on to have a chat.
Thanks for having me, brother.
So my standard opening question is, what did you want to be when you grow up? Whether you were 5 years old, 10 years old, as a kid, what was the thing? It's like, okay, when I grow up, this is what I want to be.
For me, it changed. I think when I was about 5, I can't remember what it was, but there was a military parade that I saw on TV, 5 or 6. And I thought it would be kind of cool. You know, when you're a kid and you're playing with the little soldiers with the green plastic soldiers in the street and stuff. You know, kids that grew up in the 80s, that's what we used to do. You know what I'm saying? So I think the first thing that I remember wanting to be, and I didn't even really know why, but I wanted the power. So I wanted a gun. So I figured, let me be a soldier. And I think that kind of faded. And then, there was a period where, my mom being a doctor, from I could talk, all I heard was, when are you going to be a doctor? When are you going to be a doctor like your mom? I was like, look, I don't want to be a doctor. Okay. I'll say far away from that as possible. So that was that was around maybe from 5 to 7. Because I was 5, I wanted to be a soldier. From 5 to 7, I was toying with the idea. But then I remember when I came to SA for the first time, from about the age of 8, I actually wanted to be a freedom fighter. And I remember the reason, I remember the moment as well. When, growing up in England and then coming to SA, I came through when it was Young Smuts, 84.
Yeah.
With the you weren't even black, you were non-white. I didn't even know that I could be a non-entity. I thought I was something, you know what I mean? So it wasn't even blacks and whites, it was non-whites. So I was like, wow, that's deep. So I'm coming from England, white country. At that time, I wasn't even really aware too much of race as how we understand it today, And I remember coming in there.
And you're coming to South Africa. So you're not going to Luxembourg, right? You're not going to coming to South Africa. And then you get there and there's the white and non-white.
So I'm leaving London, and I'd only been to America at that point. Because I've been to America when I was 4 and 6. So I'm now almost 8. And this is the first time I've been to Africa. So I'm like, wow. Obviously, I had all the indoctrination and the programming that you grow up with here. So I remember, and it's funny because I actually still remember this. I remember asking my mom, I said, okay, so where's the plane going to land? And she's like, well, it's going to land in South Africa. I was like, no. Before we get to Africa, where's the plane going to land? Because I didn't think planes even landed there. I'm telling you. I thought we were going to sail in. I was going to come in like some captain of a ship. And she's like, no, we're gonna fly into South Africa. I was like, they got airplanes there? She's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, so when are we going to have to catch the food? I really thought it was going to be like Tarzan, where I'm going to be in a grass skirt, I'll be chasing animals, catching food. So, and that's just purely based on what I had seen on television. In the 80s, growing up, that they never showed you anything of any kind of, apart from disease, death, and war. All I saw was that Africans were poor, and that was me coming as a black kid coming from England. So I remember landing, and then I actually remember flying over the houses and seeing swimming pools. And thinking, wow, this is not bad. You know what I mean? This ain't too bad. And then we saw the shacks. As the plane was getting lower, I said to my mom, "What's that?" And she started to explain. So obviously, I seen these signs. I'd never seen them in my life. And I think by the time we got because we went to one of my mom's aunts who lived in Dubai, in Soweto. So my first culture shock. So I'm coming from South London, from Crystal Palace, Trixie Hill, white neighbors, white school, private school, landing into apartheid South Africa in the middle.
Yeah.
I think there was probably even state of emergency at the time. So I remember after the first day, I said, okay, how do we change this? And they were like, change what? They're like, we need to change this. And they were like telling me, blah, 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 the struggle, this, that. And I was just a kid, but I was like, nah, you know what? I need to be a freedom fighter. This has to change. So I think from about that age till about 15 was when I started to switch up. I wanted to go into things like architecture, law. But for the longest, I just wanted to be a rebel.
So I'm fascinated by your background. I mean, so because also the similarities to mine, just in terms of it's like navigating cultures, right? And navigating different backgrounds and finding your space within it. And when we did, because I think we first met properly when we did the British Council thing. I had Zabs on the show as well, and we talked about that.
The last letter.
Yeah, and then having known Stagga, done Dada, and then it's like Ralph Williams III, and I'm like and then there's a Jamaican thing, which wasn't prominent. If somebody had only interacted with you as the artist, the rapper.
Yep.
How did your parents meet?
That's a good question. So my mom's from Botswana, born in Botswana, but her mother was from Ladysmith. So I have my full name is Ralph John Sipho Williams. So even though Sipho's my middle name, it's always the first name that I always use. So in England, in Botswana, even my Jamaican family, they don't call me Ralph, even though I was named after my father's father, who was Ralph Williams Sr.
Yeah.
Everybody, all my cousins, everybody, they've always called me Sipho. It's weird because so there's that. Okay, my dad is Jamaican, my mom's Botswana, South African. They met in England in late 60s.
Okay.
So my dad was early, let's say around probably in their early 20s, early to mid 20s. They were around that age. And my dad's an artist. He does modern art.
Okay.
He's worked other regular corporate jobs before, but his passion is just in the arts, oil paintings and stuff. So he was on the art scene. She was a medical student. And I think it was more about the politics of the time that brought them together. Admittedly, my mom's a nerd. She'll tell you herself. But so she wasn't and my dad is the complete opposite. He's hanging out with the cool kids. They're all smoking weed, and it's the late 60s. They're listening to Malcolm X speeches and Dolomite albums and wearing cheekies and growing their afros and discovering their roots. So they met through mutual friends, but I think it was more about the way that they were politically inclined. They actually gelled, and then they just, and even that in itself, it's not really that common because there is a civil war between West Africans and West Indians, or let's say blacks from Africa and blacks from the diaspora.
Yeah,
it's silent and unspoken, but it exists. There is that division.
How did your father come to the UK? I mean, is he first generation?
He's from the Windrush, what they call the Windrush.
Is he from the Windrush generation?
Yeah. He came in 56. So but he was about 5. So my grandparents came in the 50s.
Okay.
To England from Jamaica. And then my mom came right at the end of the 60s to England from Botswana. So she came to study, and they had just come to work. Because, after
I'm thinking it must be fascinating just kind of navigating those different aspects. So, I mean, you're in the UK, but also I know a bit about the Windrush generation, and it's only now that at least it's started to get the necessary attention, not just within England, but around the world. And I mean, I recently watched Steve McQueen did this series of films, Small Axe, which is rooted, it's very rooted in the experiences of Black Britons. I find it fascinating. It must have been fascinating just kind of navigating all of those things, because also Botswana as an African country, also there's a particular way a Botswana will carry themselves, the way they'll see themselves, right? And it's an independent African country. So your mother's coming from an independent African country, and your father's coming from a generation that continued to be oppressed, but nobody acknowledged that's what was happening.
Yeah, and you got to remember as well, like a lot of people don't realize that there are black people in England.
Yeah,
when you tell them that, they just think where. You know what I mean? Like every time I've been to America, that's what always used to happen as well. They'd be shocked that there are black people here. So I think it took a long time and plus, I don't even think really black people have really made that much noise. Like with the exception of a few, you know. But like that generation that you're talking about, like my grandparents came to Brixton, so Brixton is like the Harlem of London. You know, it's like the Black Mecca. It's actually where the only place that black people were really allowed to live. Because like Brixton, Notting Hill, where they have the carnival now, those are the only areas that you could actually get a place. Because when they came in the 60s, they would say no blacks, no dogs, no Jews, no Irish. Yeah. They had those actually. So that was the place and you know what happens? Like when a black person moves in, white person moves out. So white flight. As soon as they come in, it's like, oh no, here they come, the darkies. Come on, Ethel, let's get our things and go. Let's get out of here. And then they just leave, So Brixton became like a black area, and that's where like all my family's from. That's where I grew up. Like my earliest memories are in Brixton. I remember the first Brixton riot, like in I think 81, 80 or 81. I remember seeing it on television and looking out the window and seeing the smoke.
And seeing it outside.
Yeah, because like we live, like where my dad lives is right in the middle of Brixton, so it's like right near the town hall. So we're like slap bang in the middle. So it was nice. It was a good experience as well because, and Brixton is like any other low income area in the world. It's the same. It has the same characteristics, the same characters. You just change the name, but it's the same people doing the same shit. You know what I'm saying? It's exactly the same.
Yeah, I like the same characters, just different names because I mean,
the guys that you.
I was trying to explain to somebody, like I was watching something or something was going on and I was trying to explain to somebody, I'm like, okay, I didn't grow up in South Africa. I grew up in Masir. But you see that guy, like I grew up with guys exactly like that.
Drinking that same liquor.
Because they were going, but it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, no, like it makes perfect sense to me. Like I grew up with that guy. Like I know that guy. He may speak a different language. He may come from a different cultural background, everything else. But I know that specific guy.
And you say that, yeah. I've learned that, especially from being from so many different backgrounds, like, Jamaican culture in England, African culture in Botswana and South Africa. Even like in terms of whether I go to family in SA, family in Botswana, or family in the UK, I can even identify family members identical. Like there's that one uncle, you know what I mean? He just does it with a Jamaican accent, with an English accent, you know what I mean? Or cousin, or just somebody, you know what I mean? Or even like in terms of like my dad's friends, there are guys who are exactly the same. That are maybe my cousin's dad's friends or somebody. You know what I mean? Just identical characters, just different names. That's all. Because really, when you look at it, it's the same obstacles that they face, but in just different parts of the world. So. You know what I mean? That's why they tend to be so similar because they're going through the same, whether it's failure to launch, whether you fail to launch in Gabs or you fail to launch in Great Britain, it's the same type of depression that you're going to be in. You know what I mean?
How did you navigate identity? Like, because for you, I think it's slightly different. So mine was also navigating race.
Yeah.
Because we're in a world that continues to look at hold race up to the fore, especially in, for example, this country, where people look at what you look like first before they engage with you.
And they tell you what they think you are based on how you look.
But with you, it's black people, but it is different cultures. And while there's overlap, there'll also be differences. And how did you then navigate that process of kind of going, as Sipo, as Stagga, as Ralph, this is who I am, and this is the path I'm going to follow, taking into consideration all these different things, including hip hop, hip hop, because hip hop is another factor. Like if you're into hip hop in a particular era, that also forms part of your culture. Whether you like it or not, whether the Americans like it or not, right?
Yes. I think that's a very good question because I'll be very candid. So I went to a private school called Oakfield Prep in London. So I started school there, and that's the only school I knew in the UK. Now I was living in what was Brixton. Now we have a Starbucks. We got white people now with money. Back then we had drug dealers, drug problems, and it was just ghetto. It was the hood. People were afraid to go to Brixton. So I was living in essentially the hood and going to a private school. So like I would jump on a bus with my mom, go to school, and there'd be kids literally pulling up in Rolls Royces and Bentleys because it was a good school. But I was coming from the ghetto. So all the kids on my block, none of them went to private school. They all went to like what they call comprehensives and state school.
Yeah.
So for me, and there was a period where I remember, like, I think I was about 6. The only time I've ever wanted to kind of change anything about me. And I remember one time it was after Tron came out. Remember Tron, the movie?
Yeah.
It was after Tron came out. And I remember, and I think it was just after Diana, Prince Charles and Diana as well. And so it was like a year after that. And I remember, so my mom tells the story a bit better, but she says I was watching TV and I was doing this. And she was looking at me thinking, what is this child doing? And then she asked me like, what are you doing? I was like, no, I'm just, just moving my hair out my face. And obviously, I didn't have any hair in my face, you know what I'm saying? I had a little afro. And she's looking raw. What's happening with this child? And then I said, Mom, I want to change my name. And she said, why? And I said, because I actually, when I was a kid as well, I thought that when you grew up and you turned 30, you became a prince. I thought everybody became a prince. So I was like, Prince Sipa wouldn't work. So I wanted to be Prince Troy. And she was like, what? She's like, and I don't know why I came up with the name Troy, but I think it was, I don't know, I was just tripping. But anyway, at that age, I think even at the age of like maybe 6, 7, I knew I was black because I looked in the mirror. But I didn't understand that I was black. You know what I mean? All my friends were white.
Yeah.
I went to a white school. All my teachers were white. All my neighbors were white. It was only my mom's friend who lived in our building because we lived in our building like 71. So she lived like maybe 2 floor below. They were the only other black people. So I really didn't have, apart from my own family, who I still saw every weekend and whatnot. I just didn't have contact with black people. So for a while, I think I was definitely more of a coconut. Like I was quite, if you can still, I don't even know if that's still, I don't know if you can still use it.
Yeah, I get it.
But you know what I mean? Like I was very, and then it actually took for me going to Botswana to then really discover about culture. And then you see, herein comes the conflict because even in terms of being black African and being black Caribbean, there's huge differences. You know what I mean? And understanding all of that. Like I kind of understood Caribbean, and I think also like my parents split up. So when they split up, if then like my mom had no contact at all with my dad, or if I had no contact at all with my family, like my cousins, my grandparents, I wouldn't have known anything about the culture.
Yeah.
But even though they split up, I still had like. We're like, okay, so we were living in Brixton and we moved to Gypsy Hill. But like my cousin, who's born same day as me, he's 3 years younger. He's like my dad's brother's son. He lived literally walking distance.
Okay.
So I saw regularly, I still saw my grandparents every weekend. And I still saw my dad as well, even though my parents were split up. So that kind of kept me in touch with it. But then I think when I came to Botswana and I was completely away from it, I would only go back like maybe every year, every 18 months or so.
Okay.
So it would keep me kind of plugged in, but then I had to myself kind of, learn. And I think I had to take that up on myself as well, just to kind of learn. And then at the same time, do you remember when I came to Botswana, I couldn't speak to each other?
Yeah. I mean, you've been taken out of one environment and put smack into one that operates where it's like,
and then you know what the problem is?
Oh man,
exactly. And you know what the problem is? The problem is like when I came from England, it was like, okay, here's this kid. So everybody was like, okay, he's not quote unquote colored, but he has this name, like because like my first name is Ralph. So on the school notice board, they would just say Ralph Williams. So they never actually used to write the sequel. So everybody used to think there'd be a white kid coming into class, and then I jumped in. And it's like, they're like, okay, he sounds English. We can tell he's a black guy, but why don't you speak Setswana? So then there was that. Why you can't speak Setswana? And then, trying to make friends with people. And then like, you have to, there's a language barrier. So I had to get over quite a lot of things quite quickly and understand a lot of things quite quickly. But like, yeah, I think it was difficult, and identity wise, it took like maybe like a year of being in Botswana. But then I was like, okay, now I'm fully with this. I'm fully with the culture. I was eating pine, eating all kind of mohodu. I was deep into it. I was like head first. You know what I mean? I was like, let's go, let's do this. But then I think also like it's like opportunity cost. The more you gain of one thing, the more you kind of forget or lose of the other.
Yeah.
So slowly it kind of replaced the Englishness, because I was very, very English when I came. Like, I was the type of kid that I would want like, what's it called? Like when you, we used to call them toy soldiers, where you dip like, toast in like your boiled egg. Like I was super English. I was that English. Like where, I caught my, like I was that kid, So it took a while, but like, yeah, and then it's funny you mentioned hip hop, because that as well was like I think that was one of the things that also kept me plugged into what was happening in the world, because coming out of the end of the breakdance era, like mid 80s. So like 10, 11 is when I discovered hip hop, and then that helped. That kind of helped.
So the conversation that Zubs and I had was around this, because we all come from kind of a very similar generation, and also the countries around South Africa, we have a shared experience when it comes to things like hip hop, because although South Africa was totally isolated, I mean, like with us in my school, Macheveng High School, because we had kids from all over the world, we were getting our music from overseas, even though hip hop did not exist within South Africa. Like guys are coming back with tapes. Kids have parents who are diplomats, or and they go overseas. I mean, I used to go to Germany every year to visit, our ship to visit relatives there. So although we're living down south, we were getting this music and kind of going through that journey. Which is why I always find that for our generation, like I said in the beginning, like hip hop is, in ways that we recognize and don't recognize, it kind of became a part of who we were. So, there's the Setswana culture, if there's Basotho culture, if there's Jamaican culture, but you add on like hip hop.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because I was saying to my son, my son turned 21 like Sunday, and like he listens to hip hop music and all that, and I said to him, you guys are lucky, because you can wait for a download, or you can wait for midnight and get the new such and such. Sometimes we would know that an album dropped 4 months ago, and the tape still hasn't been sent. You know what I mean? Like I remember, like I'd go to the book center in Gabs. Yeah, there's a place called Dada Book Center. The magazines would be about 6 months, sometimes a year. Like we'd be looking at Smash Hits magazines.
Yeah.
All the ones from England, like Smash Hits and all that kind of stuff. And then Word Up, and then Yo, and then Right On. They would be old. They would be sometimes they would never be newer than 3 months out of date.
Yeah.
Never. So nothing was.
Yeah, I had a cousin who used to tape Yo MTV Raps for me, right, onto video. And then you get it, like if you're lucky, you get it once a year for as much as you could put onto one videotape.
Oh, this is exactly what I was explaining to my son, that like things like Your MTV Raps, these are things we heard about. We used to want to see it, but we didn't get it every week. And like it would literally be, and then I remember sometimes people in America would send it, and then it would be recorded on and then you'd need a multi-system. Then we'd have the video. Now we got to find someone with a multi-system. It's like, come on, dog. This is hard work. We just want to listen to some music and vibe. You know what I mean? But it was hard. Like even for me, I was lucky because I had people. I was introduced to hip hop by my father, because he was a DJ. My father being an artist. So things like Eric B. and Rakim, Paid in Full, all those albums I got from him. The NWA album. things like Schoolie D, BDP,
Yeah.
Fuji Rap. I used to listen to all of that stuff. Like, because what he used to do, he'd put on an album and then paint. He'd get the easel out, put the canvas on the easel, and then he'd maybe like play America's Most Wanted, and it was all vinyl.
And let that kind of inspire him in terms of his painting.
Yes. So that's what he always used to do. So sometimes he would play like a whole album and not paint anything and just sketch, or he'd just be listening to the music. Then he'd start painting. So I listened. That's how I heard a lot of music. And plus, before that, like when my parents were still together and we were living in Brixton, because he was a DJ, there was records all over the house, like literally, just records everywhere. So I would listen to songs like The Message. I heard them played in my house. You know what I mean? Hip hop was not something that I discovered at school or through a friend. I literally discovered it at home. I was listening to all of that at home. I was heavy into breakdance. I used to be pretty good as well. Like, and that's kind of like how I got into it. And then from the breakdance, because I was listening to hip hop music from the days of like Nucleus, Jam on It.
Yeah.
But
I was actually listening to that recently. Like, it's such a dope track.
It is. I mean, like, how can you not just boom. You gotta get into it. But it's not. Yeah, like there's something wrong with you if you can't, So things like that, things like Beat Street, Wild Star. I watched all of those things when I was a kid. And for me, it was and plus I think for me as well with hip hop music, because like I think you only realize how white the world is when you get older, because you don't realize, you just think it's just the world. Father Christmas, everything being very Eurocentric or Western or Western.
Yeah.
You don't think that there's even to the point where when I came to South Africa and we were watching things that were dubbed, like remember when they had what was it, like $6 Million Man was Demand Style. Yeah, and like they had like basically everything was dubbed. So it's like it wasn't even like, hey, we can shoot our own stories and tell our own stories. It's, let's just get somebody to just dub something that comes from somewhere else. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of level that everything was on, and you only realize just how Eurocentric everything is until you get a little bit older. So for me, the hip hop as well was a way to kind of escape from the world that I lived in that was very hardcore, and plus, like, you mentioned UMTV Raps. For me, it was about the fashion, because I would learn about new sneakers from either watching basketball games or watching rap videos, or like, I don't know if you remember, like on the Cosby Show, even like in Theo's room. Yeah. He'd usually have a poster, like a Public Enemy poster, or he'd always be wearing fresh sneakers, and he'd be always listening to something. So I watched a lot of American culture for that. Like I used to watch movies just to see what sneakers people were wearing, or watch music videos just because that was my super obsession as well, like the sneakers.
Which still is, no?
Hard, and like the fashion as well. Like, and you know what it is? I just love them because I think, and part of it was as well, like you said, identity. You're trying to find yourself. You want to be good at something. So I was never really good at sports, and I knew I was never going to be, a super athlete. But I was good at putting things together. Like, I could put clothes together, and I could put outfits together, and I knew that, and I learned this very quickly as well, because I was coming from a country where I couldn't speak the language. To be accepted by kids, you need to be cool. You need to either be strong, cool. So unless you can knock everyone out or make everyone laugh, you need to be the guy who people want to hang around. It's either they fear you or they want to hang around you. And if you got cool things, people like you. So I learned that from young, that if you have cool toys, if you have cool sneakers, from very, very young, I've been rocking sneakers like from very, very young.
Yeah, it's because I kind of... I mean, it's interesting because when you say that, like, I think so after high school, I went to Germany, and I am by and large an introvert, and it's genuinely uncomfortable for me in new spaces. Although as I've grown older, I know how to navigate it now, right? But because I was a sprinter, and the first thing I did when I landed, literally 2 days after I landed, I joined an athletics club. And so already I was able to build a small community around myself, because we were training 5 days a week. And then during spring and summer, you're running every 2 weeks. So you in a way, you're forced to really start to interact with each other because you see each other all the time.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, I'm sure doing that, you had a certain amount of credit and credibility. You know what I mean? Because you were good at doing something. You know, like I tried all that shit. I tried the football team. Man, I had all the sneakers for it. I had the kit. I just didn't have the skill. Like I had no football skill. I mean, I wasn't really a sprinter, so I knew like shit, I'm not really good at this stuff. And I knew that as well at school. And that's another thing. I was actually quite small until, like, I didn't start getting tall until I was about 16. So all through primary school, most of high school, I was just a little dude. I was the guy that no one picked. I was good at basketball. Like, I could make a shot. I could shoot. But I wasn't tall, so I wasn't really effective, you know?
Yeah.
So I just wasn't the guy that people picked. And, like, you know, in school, if you're not the guy people pick, forget it. You hold no weight. So you being an athlete, like,
if you're lucky, everybody leaves you alone. Like
exactly. But now, when you're an athlete, if you could do something academic, it's sad because they still get on the kids who are the smart ones.
Yeah,
but if you're good, like in terms of sport, like as a job, you get props in school, in high school and primary school. Like people treat you better than everybody else. No one F's with you, and people actually respect you.
Yeah.
So I kind of used like the whole. I think, just sorry to interrupt, I think in a way as well, I wouldn't really say I was an introvert, but there were times when I needed to be in my shell. And, you know, there's like, I think I got a Walkman when I was about maybe 6 or 7, for a birthday. So from a very, very, very young age, from before hip hop, I was listening to music on my own.
Yeah.
And like the albums. And then when hip hop came, I could spend, like, because I was an only child until I was 9. So I spent lots and lots of hours on my own. And if I wasn't reading or drawing, I was listening to music. But like on headphones.
Yeah.
I needed that immersive experience. I wanted to shut out the world. So I kind of used it as a way to go into like a different dimension. Because the hip hop world is very different. It's very different. When you listen to like, and I say this to people as well, like for me, hip hop was weird. Like I said, I started listening to the breakdown stuff. And then I got into like Eric B and Rakim. And when I started listening to that, I was stuck on that for like years. Like I did not want to move from that kind of, you know, the rope. Like I was really into it. The look, the rope chains, and just the seriousness of it. I thought, yeah, this is cool. This is really cool. These guys are serious. They're not smiling. Because I haven't listened to like Fat Boys.
Yeah.
Harvard. I'm in the mood. And they're always just like smiling. And, you know, it was nice. And even Run DMC, You Be Illin', it was cool. But it was not edgy, you know? It was not hard enough. And for me, when Eric B and Rakim came, Rakim was 19. I thought, this guy looks like, I want to be like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I was 10, 11, I was like, I want to be like that guy. Because I never seen him smile for like years. I said, yeah, that's the kind of guy I want to be.
I don't know if I've ever seen him smile even now.
Right? I don't think I have. And that's what I love. Like, he was just serious. He was so serious. I was like, that's what I want. I want people to listen to me when I'm talking like Rakim. So I liked it. I liked the whole, you know, and then when you move into that, and then I discovered Eazy-E right after Rakim. Like a friend of mine he actually had some video, like We Want Easy. We had it on video. And then somebody sent him the album and we couldn't believe it. It's like, wow, what is this? So it's like you discover all these subcultures and new worlds. That's why I liked it.
When did you start rapping? Like when did all of this kind of culminate in, okay, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to go and create music.
Ever.
The route I took, I still just love music and I listen to a lot of music all the time, every day. So, you know, the closest my thing is kind of, call it not necessarily a music critic, but like I'm a music lover of multiple genres. Even when I started writing poetry, I try to write some rap lyrics, but those are the days of to the hip, the hop, the hibbity hip, hip, the hop. Like the minute we started transitioning out of that, I was like, okay, that's a step too far for me.
This is not for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I never, ever, ever wanted to be a rapper. and it all happened by accident. It was not part of the plan. I wanted to be a DJ, and I started DJing. Let's say when I was about 13. Like my cousin Junior, he's like my dad's younger brother's son. So me and him, same day, 3 years apart.
Mm.
And he was a DJ, like, but he was into dancehall, like strictly.
You got it.
He'd be playing like Terror Fabulous, Ninja Man, all that good misogynistic, homophobic 80s dancehall. You know, like the good old, we're killing all the men, taking all the women, and that's that. Like that kind of real ignorant dancehall. So he came up in that era. And then we used to play, he had a little sound, so he kind of taught me like the basics. And then I kind of learned a bit more from another friend of mine called the Cell Phillips. And this is like when I was about maybe, so my cousin told me when I was about 13, and maybe by 18, when I was now back living in England, because I came back to England. I left Botswana when I was about 8, 9, and then I came back to England when I was 17, like to live. So in between, I had been coming for holidays, like. But then I learned how to DJ when I was about 17, 18, and I wanted to be a DJ. So, you know, that was my thing. I mean, I had never really written a rap. I think I had, but you know, like even when I started to record what was going to become my album, which originally was just a demo, I had only written one rap in my life, and I'd never been in a studio. And I had this one rap that I used to just use over and over and over. You know, like when you have that one nice pair of shoes and you just play them out. Yeah. That was me and my little one rap, and like I had this one little rap, but like, you know, I DJed even when I was at university, like because I went to uni here, and I was DJing at uni, and I was DJing in central London, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna be this big DJ. I'm not gonna finish this degree. You know, I told my mom I'm gonna make it. I don't need this degree bullshit. Of course, I was wrong. So I had to go back and finish. But yeah, like I think with rapping, it was just an accident. So Bizarre was the reason why I ended up actually recording an album because. So in about 1997, when I was still at uni, we tried to call Death Row. So this is just after Tupac died. Not just after, but like 3 months after Tupac died. So he would call the Death Row office, and this is before Google. Still to this day, I don't know how this Negro got the number for that. He had the number. So we would go to his dad's office in Gabs. So like basically when I was in England, okay, so when I've lived in England and when I've lived in Botswana, I've always been going to the other place for holiday. So like every year. So when I came back to live in England, this was like 93. So from 93 till, let's say 2003 when I dropped the album. So every year I'd be back now here. No, sorry, over there, like in Botswana, for holiday. So during one of these sessions, Bissau was like, look, I got the Death Row number. I'm like, how? He's like, don't even ask. So we used to go to his dad's office, take the key. His dad didn't even know, RIP. So we used to just run up the bill, man, like for hours and hours talking to these people. So one day they were like, because he called so many times, they were like, is that Bissau? He's like, yeah, like, in first name basis with the exception. So we called it like, I think every day for like maybe 3 weeks. Every single day. At the same time. And they'd be like, where y'all calling from? We're in Africa. Damn. What time is it? And then, you know, slowly but surely, they're human beings. So you build a rapport with a person. Yeah. They're gonna show their human side. And we said, look, you can see that we're serious. Can we just speak to someone? They were like, okay, look, Suge's in jail. But you can speak to Roy. So Roy Tesfaye was like one of the guys. I can't remember what his actual role was, but his name's Roy Tesfaye. So we spoke to him for like another week. And then he put us on to Sharita, who was Suge Knight's wife. So we spoke to Sharita a couple of times, and she said, listen. So at the time, she was managing Snoop, all of them. She said, listen, come to Death Row and come and see us. And then we'll talk about your proposal. And we didn't have no money. Yeah. So that's where the dream started. So it was like, you know, when we did that, I was like, you know what? We didn't get to Death Row, but we did manage to speak to Suge's wife. And we told her what we wanted to do. And they were impressed because we said, look, we've got this concept called Ties with My People. We think that the only way that we can bridge the gap between Africans and Black people in the diaspora is through music, because music is culture. Music is language. Music is spiritual communication. And, you know, that's why music is used in rituals. That's why music has been used before it became sold and before it became electronic and mass produced and popular. Music is used when you learn. Yeah. You know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You cannot have life without music. whether it's people being born or people dying. So we knew that we would be able to use music to actually reach over. But we did this in 1997. I still have it. And it was Bissau. And it's even got Schizo's. I can't even remember how he got roped into it. But we wrote this proposal and we faxed it to them. And they were like, yeah, this is great, come. They had no money. So this is like maybe 97, 98. No, 97. Because it was like a few months after Tupac. So then eventually, I fast forward like maybe 2001, 4 years later now. So Bissau, very persistent character. He manages to secure, this is like, he was probably maybe like 25. He managed to secure the first distribution deal for cellular phones in Botswana. So there's a company called Mascom in Botswana, which is now owned by
I know Mascom, yeah.
Yeah, you know Mascom, yeah. So they're like, Mascom was the first cellular company in Botswana. So how he did it, and Bissau, crazy dude. Okay, I probably shouldn't say this, but he used to take the Mascom CEO to like Joburg, to gentlemen's clubs. Okay, I said it. And I think he built a rapport with the guy to say, listen, I'm gonna do you a dude. Let's hang. And like, because he tried to get the deal, they were like, nah, you're too young, you're not gonna be able to handle this, you don't know what you're talking about. He's like, look, I can do it. And he actually built like a rapport with this guy over 18 months. And again, kind of like how he did it with the Death Row thing. And then eventually they said, okay, cool, we'll give you the deal, but you need a guarantor. So he went back, got a guarantor, and then the rest was history, because then he became the first mass distributor of phones and credit. So if you bought a Mascom scratch card in Botswana from 2001 to 2006, you bought it from us. Like this, the whole country was buying scratch cards from us. So all the BMs that you see in the video that I dropped, that was bought with scratch card money. And also, what's it called? We had public phones, because at the time there was no cell phone.
Yeah.
So they came out with you know, like the public phones that have like the car battery, the mobile ones?
Yeah.
We used to call them adondos. I don't know what they call them in SA, but basically, you used to come in, pull out your one cooler, make your phone call, and then you go. So those M3s, those X5s, those are bought one cooler at a time. Like literally, the money came in a bucket at a time. It came in like waterfalls, like you know, it came in hundreds and thousands and millions at a go, but it was literally one buck at a time that we did. So when he did that, he's like, look, remember when we tried to call Death Row, we didn't have the money? I said, yeah. He said, we got the money now. And I was in Atlanta. So I had graduated from university doing politics and economics. I wasn't the big superstar DJ I was going to become. And I just resigned myself to the fact that I was going to basically now use my degree. So I did an internship with this company in Atlanta. And I was literally like a house husband. Because like, my ex-wife she was finishing her degree. I was changing nappies and, you know, just babysitting my son and trying to get a job. And I remember, I'll never forget, Bissau called me and he was at this place called Cafe Quest in Gabs. And it was jamming, it was bumping. And I could tell he was having a great time. And I think it was a Thursday night. And then he said, nigga, what are you doing? I bet you're changing nappies right now. And I literally had the phone on I was like this. Yeah. And I had the damn nappy and I thought, bastard. And I was changing the nappy. And he goes, come now. And I was like, listen. He's like, I'll send you a ticket. I was like, if you're serious, I'll buy a ticket. And he said, okay, cool. So I bought a ticket the next day. He came and picked me up on a brand new M3. And I was like, okay, the nigga was not joking. There's money now. Because before, you know, we were borrowing our parents' cars and hand-me-down cars, and you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, there's money, let's do this. So he was like, and he literally put this all together, because he was like, I was like, why are you doing this? He's like, you know, I've never heard you rap. I was like, I know you haven't. So I'm wondering, why do you keep beating me over this you can rap thing? He's like, because I know you can rap. We're going to put out an album. So he literally went and got everybody. So Goofy, Zwei, I met them through Bissau.
Okay.
And before we did the album, we went to do, because there was no South African hip hop at the time.
Yeah,
it was just Ready D, POC, and a couple of guys rapping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think at the time, the only groups that were out was Squatter. Squatter was like, that was when Squatter was still doing their Wu-Tang impression. When they were still basically just Wu-Tang in Joburg. You know what I mean? Like before they became like the Umo, because you know, like when they did Umo, that's when they were like, okay, it's serious now.
I remember them coming to poetry sessions and getting on the mic and Yeah, like label Sugar Smacks, like coming through to
my nigga Sugar,
and getting up on the stage and doing like some rhymes at a poetry open mic, because all you do is you put your name on the list and they'll let you stand on the mic.
I think it was just them, and I just look. The only groups I really knew at that time, it was only them, you know. And like in terms of solos, the only person who was out was Amu.
Yeah.
Proverb had just dropped maybe one thing. Mr. Selvin was out. Those are the only people that I knew who were out. So we, you know, there was no hip hop producer to go to get a hip hop beat.
Yeah.
So we didn't, you know what I mean? So we went to, and I didn't even really like the so-called hip hop beat. I didn't want something which sounded like some, you know, some wannabe New York Wu-Tang shit. Yeah. I wanted something which different. So I actually, I've always been into I've always been into, you know, South African pop music like bubblegum, Stimela, all that type of stuff. No, I mean, not the Stimela's bubblegum, but I mean like the South African 80s.
Yeah, and then like the kids today don't even know that Rebecca Malope used to do bubblegum.
All that stuff. Exactly.
She's gospel now for most people,
I know.
right?
I like her from the Shell Road to Fame days. You know, that Rebecca, that Rebecca, like 87 Rebecca. That's the Rebecca I like. Yeah. Like, you know, all that kind of, what's that other one? We had that song, Achisamati.
Sipakela,
all that type of music.
And then Patricia and Jalisa. Yeah.
See all that type of music with Tiza, with Peter Tennant. I used to listen to all of that. And like, you know, because I've always listened to a lot of different types of music. So what I wanted to do originally, I wanted to sample all of those songs and then make my album out of those samples. So whether it's a Tiza sample or a Stimela sample. And I remember like, like I said, he introduced me because we went to like Lou, we went to Arthur, we went to all the different people who were popping at the time. We went to Galawa first because I know Oskido since I was like 21, so we had a relationship with.
And Skizo also had a very good relationship with Galawa.
Of course, yeah. I mean, Skizo's the reason how we had a proper relationship with Galawa because obviously, you know, and like Skizo's very important. I haven't actually mentioned him, but. He was very important because he's the first person from Botswana who actually had a deal anyway. So like when I was in high school, I think if I'm not mistaken, Skizo had like a very short-lived deal in the US, but he had some international major label deal energy, and he was the first person I'd ever heard of from anywhere near here who made any kind of roads in America. Because Skizo was at Howard the same year as Puffy, you know, because he went to Howard. So he had that, you know what I mean? Like he had that. So when he came back from America, he was like a superstar in Botswana. He was the first celebrity in Botswana. There were no, even I tell people all the time, the only celebrities in Botswana is the president. There's no such thing as celebrity in Botswana. Everybody knows each other. You know what I mean? Even if you're famous, there's still somebody who probably beat you up when you were in Tennessee. You know what I mean? So you can't flex. You can even come with money and fame, it just doesn't work. Because it's like, T-Po. And you're like, okay, you take the shades off in the club, type of thing, you know what I mean? It just doesn't work. You cannot flex like that.
Yeah, no doubt.
So Skizo was like a genuine celebrity. He's coming from America. Then, you know, not long after that, he grew up in SA, you know, like doing his thing. So yeah, he was, Skizo was quite influential, but basically and we actually went to Skizo first. Like before we actually came to Joburg, I did a demo at Skizo in like 2000. I think everybody in Botswana, part of being a Botswana artist, you need a Skizo demo. Like all of them, me, Zeus, Skazi, everybody has one. Like we went through the school of Skizo, and Skizo actually gave me the most valuable information or advice. Two people gave me very valuable advice in his music. Skizo was one of them, and Boogalove was the second. Actually, many people have, but two things have stuck out. I start with Booga. Booga, I remember like when I got into the music, he was like, just don't do drugs. That's the first thing he said to me. He said, I'm getting out of this shit. I'm going to quit this shit. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, you know what's happening in the boardroom? We got girls in there. We got all kinds of stuff in there. We're having some fun. He's like, no. And he said to me, he said, Stagga, please, whatever you do, I see that you're just new in this and you're really excited. Do not go down this rabbit hole because you won't. It'll be very difficult for you to claw your way back out. And I didn't understand what he meant until I was down the rabbit hole myself.
Yeah.
Like, damn. Booga did say to me though. He did. But like Skeezo said to me, he said, first time I ever lost a rap for him, he's like, okay, come to my house. So this is around the time when me and Bisal were calling Death Row, like 97, end of 97. And because I'm just kind of jumping back and forth, but I did this rap, so I thought it was the greatest rap in the world. And it was pretty good, like it flowed really well. The rap that I told you, the one rap that I had. One rap. So he said, yeah, I'm done, that's okay, but what's the hook? I'm like, huh? Like, what's the hook? I'm like, what do you mean what's the hook? We're gonna get a chick to sing it. He goes, listen, no one remembers all that jipper in your verse. He goes, when you listen to a song for the first time, you don't remember all that jipper. People remember the hook. That's why it's called the hook. So I'm gonna go and write a hook. I'm like, fuck this nigga, man. I just dropped him some bars. He's telling me about hook. Fuck you, he's an old man. And I remember thinking, doesn't he know we're just gonna find some chick to sing the hook? But then it's only afterwards that I realized what he was saying. He was like, look. Then I thought about what he said. I thought, but the nigga does have a point. Like, when you listen to a song, you don't remember the whole verse. You remember whether the verse touched you or not, but you don't remember any of the words. You may remember the flow. You do remember the hook. And he said, that's why it's called the hook. You need to start with the hook first. And I used that formula for writing songs after that. And I never, ever, like, because what I used to do, I used to think I could write a rhyme and go into the studio and make it fit the track. And that's actually not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to listen to the music and then come up with something that fits the melody, or at least your syncopation has to be, you know what I mean, in tune. Yeah. Sometimes when you listen to songs, you can tell that this person is using a rhyme that was not written for this song. It's like trying to put on a tailored suit that wasn't measured for you. You know what I mean? It's not going to fit. So I kind of realized what he was saying, that the hook is the most important. And like, yeah. I thought it was ironic that I just thought he was just talking shit. Yeah, it was definitely one of the best pieces of advice I'd ever been given. But yeah, so we eventually ended up working with Zwei and Goofy. That was like, that on its own deserves a movie. A movie on its own.
Well, each one of them deserves their own docu and movie. But yeah,
my bro, like, and I'm actually working on that as a sideline. But like, that in itself was just one hell of an experience. And, you know, like I said, I did for them the one rap that I had, the rap that I did for Ski, the rap that I used to bust at all the time when people used to say that. I rapped for Zwei and Goofy, and they're like, yo, that's actually pretty good. Let's record it. And I was like, okay. And then I remember, so this is like, Bisal had brought me to find them. And like, this is after he said to me, you know, are you changing diapers? And I said, yes. So I jumped on a plane a week later. He comes and picks me up from the airport, brand new M3. A few days later, we're in Joburg. So this is like Christmas 2001, December. And yeah, I met these dudes. I think I came. It was either over Christmas or over that festive period. And yeah, there were some wild boys at the time. I mean, they're still like, they're not as wild anymore, but like, yeah, they were wild. You know, it took about 3 days just for us to find them. We were like, okay, we're in Joburg. And we appeared 3 days later, like Lissi. We had to blow like Lissi, like. And then 3 days later, in a cloud of smoke. And imagine, we had the guy's house for 3 days waiting for him. It's like, yeah, I'm coming. Like, are these guys ever gonna come? And like, you know, started recording, and even that, like, I hadn't told him that, like, before, because we were doing all this stuff at his studio in his house in Morningside. So this is at his place in Morningside. Now, I never told the man that I'd never been in the studio in my life. So when we started to record, he was like, haven't you practiced this? I'm like, I had to tell him, I was like, look, bro, I've never been in the studio, bro. Like, breath control, I don't even know what you're talking about. I didn't know anything about punching in or dropping it, and he had to literally drop me in almost like word by word. And like, that was like the song that we did. But then by the time that we recorded like the rest of it, I was doing one take. And I was like, because I developed as I was doing. Because I'd literally never been in the studio.
You are listening to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast, a podcast in which I chat to Africans from a cross-section of society and sectors, including art, culture, design, business, and creativity, to name a few. I delve into their journeys, the decisions they've taken to get to where they are, how they do what they do, and everything in between. Essentially, we go wherever the conversation takes us. Do you see yourself, I know I'm kind of jumping also, but do you see yourself as an artist? Because you came out, right? And you released, how many albums did you release? Was it 2?
I'd say 1 officially. Because the second one, I put it out like as a promo. I didn't put it out on Sony. Okay. On Sony, I put out 1.
So you come out with 1 album. We then hear about this rapper called Stagga Dada from Botswana. And then it feels like you go back to, you now go to back to the UK and kind of like disappear or just kind of drop in your career. And and like you're saying earlier, like as we get older, we start to realize certain things, right? So when you're younger, you view, for many, it's like we view having released an album, being on TV, being on radio as the pinnacle, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like all you're doing is just repeating and rinsing. I mean, we also come from an era where it's not like the kids today where, you know, a Danny Glover will be a conceptual rapper, a series writer, an actor, director, like all of these things all at the same time. And it's all right. Like it makes perfect sense. Why did you then go back, and what did you do once you disappeared from at least our view? Where others would be like, yeah, Stagga fell off, right? Because
you know what it is, and like, you know, I was one of those people that if I didn't see a person, I would say the same thing. You know, it's almost like kind of like when I met Zwei, because like obviously I grew up listening to TKZ, you know. So when I met Zwei, this is like 2001. This is 2 years after. It was almost like 3 years after the TKZ Family album. So they were at the tail end of the TKZ experience. You know, it was basically dying. And for me, it's 2 things. Number one, I got into music really late. Like I recorded in 2002. And we put the music out, because remember, it was all independent. So we put it out on Creative Kingdom first in 2003, June. That's for the official release date, June 2003. Fresh actually started playing it in May of 2003. And because we were like, we gave him the stuff like December 2002, and we were like, don't play it. And like, you know, Fresh is our boy. We're cool with Fresh.
Yeah.
He's from Botswana. We know him very well. And he just said, listen, you guys are wasting time. I'm playing this shit now. And he just started to play it. Cause like, we were like, nah, wait. And he's like, nope, I'm not waiting no more. So he started playing Roll With Me. That's my favorite song. And that's the song that Goofy produced. But Goofy produced 3 tracks. But when he did that, as soon as Fresh started playing Roll With Me, my phone started to ring. Like from that day that he played it on his show, I started getting booking. And I had been booked before. Like I was getting bookings before I even was on radio, because I was managed by Sipo Dlamini, who's now CEO of Universal.
Yeah, I know Sipo.
Yeah, you know Sipo. Yeah, and he actually co-produced half of the EP. So half of it was produced by Zwei and Goofy, half of it was produced by Sipo and a guy called Mike China from Cape Town. And there's a couple of things. Number one, it was all independent. So we did everything. We paid for all of that. The video, the cars, music. It was not like no one gave us a check and said, hey, go and do this. We did that ourselves. We A&R'd it. We chose everything. So what you see and what you hear is like nobody said, hey, okay, we had internal arguments, because like I'm coming from England where I was wearing like Moschino, Versace, Dolce & Gabbana. Niggas is wearing Fubu. And like, you know, I'm all down for supporting black business, but I was never into Fubu. None of that shit. I was like, listen, you guys stay there with your Fubu. Look, Black Power and all the rest of it. My shit's Italian, I'm sorry. I'm from England. I'm Eurofit. I'm not wearing this baggy bullshit that you guys are wearing. You look crazy. I'm not gonna wear none of that shit. So we had arguments about that, about my image. There was big arguments about that. And they were like, okay, at least look a bit more athletic. So that's why I came out with the headband and tracksuit stuff. Anybody who knows me knows I never wore a headband in my life. You know what I mean? Like, what for? I'm not no athlete. not running anywhere. I never joined the gym. You know what I mean? They had me in headbands and shit. So I actually wanted to wear my straight cut shit, like, because that's who I am. They were like, nah, no one will understand it here. I'm like, look, no one has ever understood it here. So people used to diss me for that. Like, because I was wearing Moschino in the mid '90s, and when they were calling it Moschino, they're like, why are you wearing tight shit? I'm like, because I like it. You know what I mean? Nah, I wear baggy shit. Like, no. So I used to dress like that when I used to sit down. So that was the only thing that we thought about. But in terms of how you saw me and what you heard, that was all. None of that was controlled by any label or powers that be. So once, and this is the thing which I didn't like. So we spent like a lot of money on that. Like it cost about maybe the video cost 200 grand. The album cost maybe another 200. So we were almost up to $500,000 in
the early 2000s.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Still the only rapper in Africa to rap in a helicopter. Nobody's ever done that. I was actually if you're being honest, I was the original North Guard. And I know some people are going to be touched by me saying that. Because no one in Santa had money. I was the only nigga with money in Santa. I was the only rapper in, let's say, the burning car. I did 3 BMs before I even dropped the album. It's like, I saw the people who had money on the scene and I saw who didn't. There was no money in rap music. I was on bills with Kwaito artists. You know what I mean? The only people who had money were Kwaito. I actually hung out with Kwaito artists. I hung out with guys like Mendoza, guys like Brown, all those Kwaito niggas. Even my Willies, that was like one of my highlights. Like when I got to smoke some trees with my Willies, I was like, okay, this is it. I can leave. I'm done now.
Dude, man. Chilama Voto was my jam.
Listen, like I told him, and like, you know, I was speaking that supermodel C English, and he was just like, yeah, just pass the day, my nigga. And I was just telling him how much I used to pump his shit in England, and he was just like, yeah, whatever. Just pass that stuff. So I kind of saw a couple of things at that time, which for me, I was like, so it's, like I said, it took a while just to put it out because we were doing it independently. Yeah? So it came out June 2003. We got a national release in April of 2004. This is after we shot the video. Because I recorded in 2002, end of 2002. We shot the video in November, December 2003. So the music had not been put out. You know, so I sat on that, what became the album, for a whole year, just playing it in fucking Santon. Driving around, meeting different people telling me how great it was, but like, hey, when is this thing going to come out? And it actually started to get bootlegged heavily on the street. And Malcolm X. You know Malcolm?
Yeah, well, I don't know him personally, but I know of him.
Yeah, so he actually came to Botswana. And he only told me this later. That I said, why did you come to Botswana trying to sign me? He came to try and sign me for EMI. He said, EMI wanted to sign you. Because Malcolm had heard in a combi, I had a song on my first CD called Be Black. Like me personally, I wanted to make the whole thing militant and just talking a whole lot of militant shit. And they were like, listen, you cannot be coming out wearing tight jeans, talk about militant shit. No one's gonna buy that shit. Okay? You can't come in here dressed in Italian designer shit, talking on some pro-black nonsense. Nah, it's not gonna work. So they said, okay. So I recorded like a few, and they let me put one on the EP. But he heard that song called Be Black. He said he heard it in a combi. And he stopped the guy and he said, who is this? And he said, oh, it's some guy. Apparently he's from Botswana, but it was a bootleg of it. Just like a burnt copy of it. It was being burnt, like basically from December 2002 to 2003 June when we dropped it. The album without, basically the version of the album which basically was missing one track was being heavily bootlegged. So Malcolm actually came to Botswana to try and meet us. And I remember I was like, Bissau, and some guy called and he's like, yo, Bissau, there's a guy called Malcolm who wants to talk to you. He's like, Malcolm who? We thought it was Malcolm from Botswana, but we know a guy called Malcolm. He's like, he says his name is Malcolm X. I'm like, man, tell that nigga to fuck off. We actually said that. And he's like, no, he wants to talk to you. He's like, tell him to fuck off. He said he's come from Joburg. He's like, we don't give a fuck. I said, look, I don't care if he's come from the grave. Just tell him to fuck off. I was like, who calls himself Malcolm X?
Yeah.
And expects to be taken seriously. So we found out years later that he actually had been sent by them to try and sign me. And eventually, we didn't sign with EMI. We talked to them, talked to everybody. When we shot the video, all the people who had dissed us, like Gallo, Sony, EMI, they didn't actually diss us. They were just like, we're not sure what we can do with it. Because they were like, look, this is great. We've never marketed hip-hop before. You sound very international. We don't really know what to do with it. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. But yeah, we're interested. So we dropped the video, and no, actually we shot the video. And when we first started to play it, they were like, okay, let's talk. And then yeah, you know, with record labels, once you've done most of the work, they give you the deal.
Yeah.
So we got like it was like Creative Kingdom got like a distribution deal. So I eventually became I'd say I was a Sony artist. Like I would go on the Sony promo tours. You know, they treated me like a Sony artist. So that was kind of like yeah, it was like so my experience with the major was I didn't really enjoy it because there was a lot of restrictions being on a major label. And in terms of what you could and couldn't do and what you could and couldn't say. So for me, I think I was a little bit jaded by the fact that it took us from recording in September 2002 to releasing it in April 2004. And I was like, you know, it took a while. And like, by that time, I was now, 2002, I was going to be like, I was 26. So most people, when they drop their first album, before, you know, 26 is like, I think only Jay-Z and DMX drop albums at that age. And like even Eminem, like, it's very late to drop your first album. Like usually in hip hop, you will have been on an album, maybe one or two albums before you drop. And then, you know, you drop your album 21. You know what I mean? And that's old. Most people drop between the age, I mean, Rakim was 18. Most of the people that dropped, even though we know that we listen to, were around the age of 18, 19, 20. You know, De La Soul, they were all about 19, 20 when they dropped their first stuff. And that's the age where you are fearless in terms of creativity. So I just thought, wow, I'm a little old now, you know, because like, and then the album came out, and then when the song started to blow up, and I was getting all this airplay and shows and everything, we're now into 2003, so I'm like 27 years old. You know? So when you're 27 and you're going to do school, and you've got 16-year-olds screaming, it's like I couldn't, you know what I mean? Like,
you have a child, right? Like you're not
exactly.
It's not just
and I was married.
You're married
exactly.
with a child out in the world.
I was married with a kid. So like I'm like married with a kid. Most of the people who were trying to get into music at that time were wilding out. You know what I mean? So for me, I was like, look, in 3 years' time, I'm going to be 30. Like, if I have to wait for another album cycle, because I kind of said, okay, I'll probably try and put out 2 or 3 albums and then that's it. My plan was always to make money from music and get into property. So I knew that I had to do that before I turned 30. So I did not want to be telling people to throw their hands in the air when I was 35 years old. Trying to, you know what I mean? I didn't want to be up and coming at 35. Like, I was like, okay, I need a hit song. If I get a hit, I'm out. And then luckily, the second single was a hit. It was like a mega hit. I was like, okay, maybe I don't have to wait till the next album. You know? Because so that's part of the reason. It's partly because of number one, I was old, and I was a lot older. Like, and then all the people that I was now going to be rapping against, or my contemporaries, you know, they were all like in their early 20s. Some of them were in their teens. You know what I mean? And like I said, like if I'm going to be, even in terms of university, 27, like you're too old to be at a university. You know what I mean? Like when you're 30 years old, you should not be looking for girls at the freshers' ball. You shouldn't be in university. You know what I mean? Because like when we were like when I was coming up in the South, we would go to Vic Tech in like the 90s. So like it was like 95, 96. I'm like 19. You know what I mean? So yes, I could go to Vic Tech at the age of 19, 20, 21. When you're over 25, what are you doing? What are you doing into university? Looking for university. You know, that's pedo shit. And like, you definitely cannot be in your 20s entertaining. Because the only people who scream at the shows, kids. Grown women don't scream. You know, they'll scream from the back. They're not going to come to the front and scream from the front. The people screaming from the front are kids. Let's face it. You have to be like between high school and just starting college. Nobody doing a PhD is at the front of any concert screaming for anybody. Okay, no one. And no one in their third year is screaming for anybody either. It's only people in the first year and the second year. So I was conscious of the fact that, look, I may look young, but nah, this is not going to work for me. And then another major blow was that Bissau obviously went to prison. So that's another, like I said, that needs a documentary on its own because like So Bisao obviously is the guy who was my executive producer. He put all the money up. He gave me the fuel and the fire. He not only gave me the fuel, he lit the flame as well. He didn't just say, "Hey, here's the fuel." He lit that motherfucker too, and he didn't even light it with a lighter. He did it old school, like with the rubbing with the. It took him years to rubbing the stick. Like,
Yeah.
yes, nigga, I'm gonna get you lit, and he did. You know? So when he went to jail for like attempted murder, and I thought that's another thing. Like when we were recording this the whole time, I was like, this guy might go to jail for 12 years. What's gonna happen if he gets found guilty? Because I know he's gonna get found guilty. And you know he had an attempted murder charge, and it was like, you know what? If this guy goes to jail, what am I gonna do? And I remember like a couple of people, couple of labels and stuff were like, okay, look, they you know they made offers, but like, and I don't really want to go into that, but like, I just felt like it would be disloyal if I kind of left what we were doing because he's the guy who put me on.
Yeah.
And I thought if I can't do it with him, then I'm not gonna. And then yeah, he ended up like around September of 2004. He caught a charge, but he didn't get like a heavy sentence. But him, you know, him going to prison and that it kind of messed up the trajectory and the momentum that we had. Because we made some very good momentum. Because remember, like I said, it was all independent. So we did a lot. Like for just two guys with a dream and some nuts.
So is that how? I mean, so it was. Those are the things that kind of, I guess, not necessarily drove you, but prompted you to make the decision to go back to the UK and just kind of do something else.
And the biggest one, which I have to talk about, the elephant in the room, is drugs. Because I was getting a lot of money. I was getting a lot more money in telecommunications. Because when I was doing telecommunications, like when we were doing phones, like, 20 grand a week was just normal. You know? And this is like early 2000s.
And at that time, I mean, that's
a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
20,000 pula. Like, cause one pula was like almost 2 grand.
Yeah.
So like 20,000 pula, like, 40, 50 grand a month, 80 grand a month were things that I had seen. And at that time, I was still living on my mom's house. I don't even think she knew. Like, there was just money everywhere. Like, we were making fast money. And it was like drug money. But the music, the money from music was nowhere near. It was comfortable, but like it wasn't near. And like to be honest with you, the money that I was making from music was shows, and I was good because I was getting booked. I think I probably was the first rap song to get heavy rotation on Five. Like as far as I know, there was nobody else locally who was getting heavy rotation. I mean, I was definitely the first English local rapper to get heavy rotation on Trumbo and They even told me, they said, listen, we don't play this music, but this song is banging. You know what I mean? Like, and that was the weird thing. Like, it was not Mutuaco. It was all in English. But it got played a lot on stations like the Trumbo and stations that didn't really play a lot of, that type of rap music.
Yeah.
So, I gigs for days. I mean, I've gigged in Saldana Bay. You know what I mean? Like, I've gigged all over South Africa. There's no part of South Africa I haven't had a gig, and I was getting gigs in. Remember, even the first time I did a gig outside of SA, I did a gig in Namibia, and even that I was shocked. I was like, "You guys are gonna pay me that much?" I've never been to Namibia in my life. They flew me and Zwei, and I was like, "Yeah, this is great." And I might as well even just tell this. I remember like I'm on the plane first time. So this woman, the stewardess says, "Hey, excuse me, sir." I'm like, me, Zwei, Bissau, our shades on, feeling like a man. I'm gonna do my first gig outside of thingy. I'm like, okay, I've arrived now. And she's like, oh, that young lady would like your autograph. I was like, get in! I haven't even dropped the video and I'm being recognized. This is great because I think up until that point I just done drums and like True Love and just the local media. I'm like, this is it. I made it. First autograph signing on a plane. Come on, man. There's private jets in a couple of years. What? And then, so the girl comes over. She's like, oh, hey. This is what's up with Zwei. She was all excited. She's like, oh my God. Can't believe, and this is like when I was still in my headband, boyhead. I was like, oh, I can't believe I had to say, I can't believe it's you, da 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 da. So she's talking and she's like, So when is the album dropping? And I'm like, yes, this album's gonna do numbers. They're even asking for it. Street Niggas Heat. And then she says, yeah, you know, and then she started talking about candy sweat and apple seed. I'm like, apple seed? Candy sweat? Like, what are you talking about? And then she's like, yeah, you know, I just love you. And she's like, oh, please give my regards to Stevie. I'm like, and at the time, I lived opposite Stevie, like in Sunny Hill. I'm like,
But she thought you were stoned.
I'm like, and I said to Swai, I said, and so I just went, wait, this right stone. Nobody knows who Stagga is right now, but they will soon. Bro, I actually wrote the S and the T, and I paused. I had to do it. And I just put OAN. First photograph I signed it as Stone. It's like, that was like one of my, and that was like one of the moments that, you know, that's part of why you like it, because you want that recognition. But then, to be 100% honest, there was a lot of drugs in the music game. And I was always like very anti hard drugs, you know, like from England. And, you know, I mean, I smoked even up until that point. But then, you know, you experiment. You know, when you hang out in new places, hang out in new spaces, you adapt. You start doing new things.
Yeah.
And that's the only downside. You acquire new circles. New circles means new people. New people means new pastimes. That means new habits. So things that you initially frowned upon, you see them and you're like, damn, okay, well, he's got his car. He seems to be, and you don't know how many months behind on their payment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, I just dropped him at his crib and, you know, it looks okay. And you don't know that the guy hasn't paid his bond in about 6 months. And the guy with the car hasn't paid his car. Like, the sheriff is looking for that car. You know what I mean? And I think it's so easy. Well, it was for me anyway. Kind of and that's the thing. I didn't get super caught up, but I did get caught up a little bit in the whole celebrity thing. And then with that came drugs, and with drugs came experimenting. And then there was a time when I kind of felt that, okay, now I'm overdoing it. And I remember Malcolm, because he hates anything to do with any type of drug. And he was like, gangster, because he stutters. He's like, Alicia, I told you stop this drug shit. And we used to have arguments all the time. You know, he'd be like, no, you're smoking too much weed, and I know you fucking up with all kinds of other drugs, blah, 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 blah. And he was like one of the people who would always say to me, stay away from this shit, because he was my publicist. And, you know, other people are like, especially when you're making money, people want you to do that because you pay for it. And, you know, the crazy thing about being in entertainment as well is that I think for the first year, I didn't touch any. And then it gets to the point where you can only do so many gigs in a night. And you can only drink so much free Jack Daniels before, you know, when you get to the third gig, you're really stirring your feet. And you know, that's kind of like how I got it. And then after a while, I just kind of realized that, yo, this is, you know, like, it's kind of like that, what's his name lyric? Damian Marley. From once in a blue moon to once in a blue sky. And that's when you know that, okay, this is now, you're losing yourself. Because you see, what happens is, the circle that is around you completely changes. And now, it's almost like you shed your skin. So your old skin, which is of the people that you know that are safe, that protect you, you discard that shit. Now you want this new, wild world where it's like, you know, it's like, it's nocturnal. It's all kinds of shit. You know what I mean? So that's what happens.
And I think it applies to any environment, because you know, like when I went into rehab, but when I went into rehab, I cut out certain people. But in cutting those people out was realizing that these people had been part of my life for like the last 2 years when I was getting into drugs. So they came with the drug. So the minute I left the drug, it's like, actually, they, you know, under normal circumstances, these people would have never really been part of my life, because that was the only unifier, right? And now I sit and I go, there's people, some of those people I haven't seen in 20 years, right?
Yeah.
In 20 years, where there are people who were there before, maybe during, and now after, those are my people because they're still a part of my life.
But you see what you said? That's exactly it. And it's funny because like you realize that, and like you see it, and then I said to myself as well, I kind of knew, like I was very well aware of what was going on. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, why is this happening? What's going on? Like I knew what was happening. I knew how I put myself in that position. So I said to myself, you know what? This is not gonna work. And this is the problem. Then I said to myself, okay, am I gonna do a boogaloo and go back to, because I remember even with Booger struggled for a while, to become completely clean. Because like, there was a time when me and him were living in the same complex. I remember like, I'd always say, hey man, come in. He'd be like, no, Dada, and he'd laugh. He'd be like, you know what? I can't. Like, I really can't, man. Nigga, like, I love you and everything, but I know who's gonna come later. Because he used to see the card. You know what I mean? He knows. And like, we know the same people. You know what I mean? So he knew that it was not that he didn't want to be around me or whatever, but it was just the people who I was around. And that's another thing. I knew that also it was a bit weird because some of the people who were kind of heavy into that lifestyle were the people that I had just now met in this music industry, who I'd formed relationships with. So it's like, do I want to continue down this path of music with these people or not? And a person would think, oh yeah, but it's easy. You just find new people. It's not that easy just to say, okay, I'm gonna just find new people. You know what I mean? And like, it would really literally mean cutting off someone who I've just met. And
you have to be deliberate.
I wanted to.
Like, you have to be deliberate about it. It can't be let me do X, Y, Z and hopefully I can drift away like that.
Exactly.
But I do want to ask, like, was it made easier by the fact that you had something that a lot of people didn't have, which was an outlet that was literally a different country?
Yes,
it's like
that's the only thing that saved me.
You could leave and go to back to London.
Yeah, you know what I tried to do when I realized that it was becoming a bit of a problem. I tried to go back to Botswana, not briefly, but like I just tried to like just duck out. I still have my place in Joburg and whatever. But I said, look, you know what? Maybe I need to. I didn't want to go as far as rehab, but I just wanted to be away from the machine. Joburg is a machine, and it's like, no, it's a machine and it's an animal as well. And and it's weird because coming from London, you'd think, hey, you're coming from London. Hey, Joburg can swallow up anybody. You could be coming from Lesotho, Limpopo, or London. It will swallow you because Joburg is like that. And you need to understand. And Joburg in the early 2000s, man, was different. And like, I think as well, at that time, like, it was such a word. I don't even know what word. It was so different from anything I'd ever experienced, And I had experienced so much in my life. But it was a very new experience for me. And then I think that outlet, it really did help because I thought to myself, okay, if I'm going to get off these drugs, I need to be out of this whole scene completely. So I did go to England, tried out. And I remember when I came back, that's when I started to work on my second album. And I remember that festival, I was with Goofy. We went to a party and I tweeted about it the other day. And I was just drinking juice. This chick was just like, yeah, so how long you been on ARVs? Excuse me? And she's like, yeah, it's festive. You're drinking juice. Okay, you probably got AIDS. It's no big deal. There's no stigma anymore. I'm like, really? Like, I'm just drinking juice because I don't want to, At first she thought I had alcohol in my juice. Then I said, no, it's juice. And it took like 20 minutes of me having to explain why I chose not to drink. And I didn't want to say to her, do you know what? I'm not drinking because drinking triggers all kinds of shit. So I don't want to trigger that. And I know that alcohol for me is my gateway. Like, I'm very happy like smoking trees or whatever. But if with some people, if you drink alcohol, it's just a mess. So I didn't want to drink alcohol because I knew that if I drink alcohol, calls are going to be made. So don't drink. So, you know what I mean? And then it was like, now I'm having to justify why I'm not drinking. This is hard work. So, and that's the type of pressure that you get in SA. Like,
Yeah.
if you say to a person like, "Hey, I don't want to drink," and people forget that some people they don't drink because maybe they grew up in a house where their father was beating their mom. I mean, that didn't happen to me, but maybe alcohol has those triggers. You know what I mean? So it's like people shouldn't force people to drink, thinking that everybody needs to be drunk to enjoy themselves.
Well, look, I believe that South Africa has a collective drinking problem.
Oh, big time, big time.
And we see it all the time. So, I mean, I still drink, but after rehab, I became like, I didn't drink for 10 months, and I drink for the enjoyment of what I'm drinking. So, like, I will get home, pour myself a whiskey and chill and, drink that. And then once I'm done with it, like, I go to bed. Like, I'm not trying to finish a bottle. So, and I very rarely actually drink when I'm out of the house. And you find like it blows people's minds. But fortunately also, I'm 49 years old now. Like, I really don't care what you think. Like, I actually do not care. So it's easier to live like that, but it's taken me all of these years. So as we let's start to wind down, because I think we could go on forever.
Oh, for sure.
What does your life look like now? Like, what does your life look like now? What are your priorities and that sort of stuff?
I mean, it's very different. So basically, when I came out the scene, so besides I was in prison, I'm trying to dry myself out in England, and then I said, okay, look, I've made a bit of money. Let me try and throw this into property. So I did. So I managed to get that going, and that's kind of like what I was doing from around 2006 and 9. I mean, it took 3 years to build it because, first of all, it was not funded by the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a couple of investors and a partner, and I tried my first property venture. It was like 6 apartments. After that, went on to build houses, sold them. So I got into that, and then was managing property.
Sure, where was this?
This is in Botswana.
Okay.
Botswana. So like, I came to England, right out of it, and then went back to Botswana, and then just decided, you know what, let me just do the property.
Mm.
So got into that. At the same time as when I was doing that, I was recording the second album. But I think by that time, I had now like crossed the 30 mark. I was like 30 at that point. And it's not that. Look, music is never gonna go away from passion. Like, it was not something that I was interested in doing like that anymore. I wanted to, and like my son was getting older. You know what I mean? And like I just wanted to do things that I felt were just more serious. And so I did that, got into that commercial, and I mean residential first, then commercial, and I did that for a number of years. Then came back to the UK again. I have a partner who, okay, I'm jumping around. So in between that, like, I've always been doing music related stuff. So I started to manage my brother's band. My brother was in an indie band for Young Hearts. This is in England now. So I came back to England after I got the property set up. Came back to the UK, started messing with my brother's band. So I actually started a management company. I managed him and a couple of other artists. So I started working with a guy called Carlos Pimentel, who is a lawyer. He's a lawyer. So he used to be at Loud Records, and he used to manage the Beatnuts.
Yeah.
And he was DJ Khaled's first lawyer. So we tried to do a couple of different ventures. I tried to bring Busta Rhymes, tried to bring a couple of people. It was a bit difficult to get the buy-in from people in Botswana. And then, there's a couple of different things that we tried to do. And then eventually, what we started to do most recently was what I'm doing currently now, which is a documentary project on an athlete from Botswana called Nigel Amos.
Yeah.
He was the favorite for the gold at Tokyo. So we're in the middle of wrapping up the first half of this documentary, but we're going to do the second part of his. I've lined up a few other documentaries, like I mentioned. I actually want to do one on TKZ, and I want to do the TKZ story, talk about them as individuals, them as a group, the impact that they had. I have a few more documentary projects lined up because that's the kind of direction that I want to go in now. But yeah, that's the kind of route I took. I got more into the actual business, because like I said, I did economics and politics at uni. Never really wanted to be a politician. But I thought I would get more into the business side of it. So I actually spent my time from like maybe '06 to let's say '12, 13, 14, around there, just in different business ventures. As you know, with business, you know, some shit works, some shit doesn't.
Yeah.
And you know, you gotta work. You have to work until you get the formula right. Until you know what's right and what's not working. So that's kind of like what I did. And I mean, like now presently, I'm still in the property, still in the creative world in terms of production. And I think more recently, like in the last maybe 2 years, I've gotten into cryptocurrency.
Okay. And
So
being a father.
that's where. Oh no, that's always been. That's always been like. So yeah, that's my day to day. Like I'm not married anymore, with divorce. But like my son basically came to live with me when he was 14.
Okay.
So but from like maybe the age of between 5 and 14, he was not living with me. He was with his mom, and you know he came over here. So he's in the third year of uni now. So I've been living with him since he was 14, and then my daughters, they've been living with me since let's say 2016.
So
So I'm just like a full time single dad now.
And full time taxi.
Oh yeah,
Because I mean
referee,
that's
taxi, chef. You know what I mean? Like all kinds of things, bodyguard. So yeah, like in terms of creative wise, I'm always going to be a creative. I mean, I still do. Like my brother, like I mentioned, I used to manage his band. His band disbanded, and he randomly got signed by ASAP Rocky. Just one night, just doing random things in England. Up into this guy, he didn't even know who he was. Went to the studio. Remember, he called me like, I met this guy from America called Rocky. Didn't even know who he was. Like a week later, Rocky's got him in a studio with like Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, and like, recording some songs from his album. And he knew who they were, but he didn't know who A$AP Rocky was. So, you know, even with that, like I've always been around when people are doing creative things. You know? So like when my brother was doing stuff, I was like just as their manager, just in the back. You know, we were one time we were at Abbey Road and they were recording stuff. So I was always there, like, you know, even when I was doing even when I was not active in music and I was just chilling, like I was in people's sessions, like when Dada recorded Zonke. I was in the studio when he was recording that. In a lot of niggas' sessions, I was there. You know what I mean? I was there. I just didn't say anything on the mic. I was there. I was always in the mix because like creativity is something that keeps me going, and it's always something that I'm always gonna be on. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
It's good catching up. Like it's weird. Like I guess it's weird how this world that we live in works, right? Because what will happen is that you will bump into somebody or interact with somebody, and then you don't actually physically see each other. So I have friends, like I have people I consider friends where I'm like, I've actually only met them like twice. Like physically.
Yeah.
But because of the world we're living in now, if you're conscious of it, you find a way of connecting and building and getting an understanding of how we're each wired and what resonates and what doesn't resonate. And yeah, then we have conversations like this where it's like we hung out for like a week.
I know.
We hung out for a week.
You know what's funny? Like I actually was gonna mention that because I'm coming to, you know, like shooting this documentary has been quite difficult, obviously because of COVID. So a lot of it has been remote. So I have to come and finish off some of the interviews. So I am actually going to be in SA. So we need to go out for a whiskey. I'm going to be down there. I was supposed to have been there. I was supposed to have been there 19th of last month.
Okay.
But I didn't because of the whole, you know, like COVID restrictions, which is crazy. Now that they've lifted everything, I'm actually looking to come down. I'm going to be in SA. So I'm going to be there before November.
Right,
but I'm gonna come down to. I have to finish the first part because there's just a couple more interviews that we need to do, and then I'm gonna start doing. And actually, I'd like to interview you for that, like in terms of because you're a guy who I could ask you questions about like in terms of like the impact of like Falafala at Halloween, like for you, the young man, like when those albums came out? Like, how did they impact you? Because that's kind of like mostly what the documentary is going to be about, like the legacy of what they did, you know. So we're going to start that.
Yeah,
so
because to get the three of them aligned is another. I mean, I've tried to do it for a couple of things, and I know other guys have tried to do it for a couple of things, and it's just like actually just talk to each one individually. Like it's like
no, I'm gonna do.
Like
no, I'm actually gonna do. It's funny that you say that because, and I'm gonna get a lot of the guys, like the other guys who were there.
Yeah.
You know, guys who were there, like not on the mic, but just in the studio.
Yeah.
Those are the guys who tell you. You know, if I ask people about Zwei or Buga or any of them about each other, they're gonna give me bullshit answers. You know that, and I know them. But they're gonna give me bullshit answers. And
also they're older now. I mean, like when they do gigs, like them doing gigs now, it entertains me. Because you talk to one, and I remember when they came out with what's it, Home Again or Come Again, and then Cabello, because Cabello kicked the habit and is fit and healthy and everything else, and then like Zwei is just like, yo man, like this dude is jumping all the time and running up and down, like I haven't got the lungs for it, I haven't got the legs for it. It's like, yo man, this thing is work.
I know.
I try to get them to when I had So when I was at Kaya, one of the things that I was trying to do there was they wanted me to do a documentary in Kwaito. And so I looked at it, because initially years ago, I actually wanted to write a book on it. And because I'm a writer, so like that's easy in my mind. But what we then decided to do was I roped in Wandi, in Zimande, DJ Wandi, to work with me on this stuff. So what we started doing was literally interviewing individuals. And the idea was then we could actually turn it into a series like a 45-minute. We could take the audio and make it a podcast. We could take the video and do cutaways and make it something. And we interviewed 4 people. We interviewed Stu. I was trying to get TKZ. Eventually, I just interviewed Zwei because Zwei I could just go. I mean, our kids were born together and are growing up together. So like our kids, to him, I was just like, yo man, this is what I'm doing, come through. And then we interviewed Speaker, and then Wandi interviewed Ishmael.
The Listen to Your Footsteps podcast is produced by Zebra Culture. If you have ideas of what we can do better, people you'd like us to have a conversation with, or would just like to share a thought, you can email me on info@zebraculture.com. To check out past episodes, go to kojobuffer.com/podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share with a friend. If you'd like to get a copy of the book, Listen to Your Footsteps, check out kojobuffer.com/book. There are details on the various spaces it's available at. I'd also appreciate it if you could leave a review or comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, there's the Zebra Culture by Kojo Buffer newsletter, where on a weekly basis, I share a curated list of articles, playlists, videos, etc. that have caught my attention. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.